Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. We have more gaming and PlayStation news, rumours and leaks to go over. Huge shout out to the God of War and Uncharted channel members, and if you enjoyed today's video, please show your support by hitting that like button. So it's no secret that Sony's drive to deliver a profitable and successful live service game so far has proven to be an absolute disaster. There is concern that 2 more games could face the chop and add more misery to Sony's list of live service games that have been cancelled or stopped midway through development, starting with Fairgames. Now, if you remember, this game was revealed alongside Concord, another live service shooter that Sony launched and then shut down just weeks later. Both of these titles were part of Sony's big push, announced by Jim Ryan, into the live service gaming market. The idea was to move beyond the story-driven single-player experiences that Sony has built over the past 25 years and move away from games that they're known for, like The Last of Us, God of War, and all those great games from the PS4 and era before that, and to try to compete in the multiplayer space and always online space where games like Fortnite, Call of Duty, Warzone, Escape from Tarkov, and those kind of games where they thrive. But it hasn't exactly gone to plan. In fact, it's been an absolute embarrassment for a company like Sony. Behind Fairgames is Haven Studios, a relatively new team founded by industry veteran Jade Raymond. For those unfamiliar, she was one of the key figures behind the original Assassin's Creed game at Ubisoft and has a long history working on major gaming franchises, although without any major success to my recollection. Her involvement brought a lot of attention and credibility originally to this project when it was first announced. However, Raymond has recently been let go, or she left, whichever it was, whether it was pushed or whether she jumped. She's no longer part of the studio, which raises eyebrows, and for good reason too. Not long after her departure, reports started coming out that the internal testing and feedback on Fairgames had been less than positive. According to Bloomberg and other sources, the early version of the game, referred to internally as Project Heart, was made available to a limited number of users through PlayStation's network in a kind of pre-alpha test. Those who got their hands on it described it as a mix between Battle Royale and an extraction shooter. The concept was built around a team-based heist game, and you and 2 or 3 teammates drop into a large urban map with the goal of breaking into high-security vaults and stealing valuable loot. But you're not alone, other squads are doing the same thing, and if you kind of clash with everyone, and it's a race to grab the goods and escape. On paper, it sounds like possibly a fun and competitive idea if you're into these types of games. A modern day Robin Hood scenario with sleek, stylish characters and high stakes missions. That's actually how the game was first marketed, as a kind of futuristic heist experience where players rob from the rich. But here's where things start to fall apart. People who played the test version say the gameplay just didn't feel good. Descriptions of it being clunky and poorly polished are consistent with what insiders have been saying behind the scenes. The controls apparently felt sluggish, the shooting wasn't satisfying, and the overall experience was described as unpolished and underwhelming. For a game that's been in development for years, that's not a good sign. In fact, it's terrible. Poor leadership, if that's the case. This all lines up with Jade Raymond's exit and the general unease surrounding this project. It's been 4 years since Haven Studios was first put together and formed, and over 2 of those years since Sony officially acquired them. But so far, there's been little to show for the project. To make matters worse, Sony has already had to backpedal on a number of other live service plans. Concord launched with a lot of fanfare, but quickly fizzled out, and several other multiplayer titles have been scrapped entirely before they've even been announced to the public. It's clear that Sony's big gamble on live service games hasn't paid off the way they'd hoped. And while the company insists they're still supporting Haven Studios under new leadership, it's fair to say that confidence in Fairgames is shaky at best. With so many live service projects either cancelled or quietly restructured, the future of this title is anything but certain. Right now, it feels like Fairgames is hanging on by a thread. Now, that's the scenario with Fairgames and Haven Studios. The other studio and game under intense pressure right now is Bungie and Marathon. Marathon, which was officially revealed back in May 2023. It's a reboot of one of Bungie's earliest franchises, a series that dates all the way back to the mid-90s, before Halo, before Destiny, and before Bungie became the studio it's known for today. But this new version of Marathon isn't your typical remaster or remake. Instead, continuing the old story of retelling it with modern graphics, Bungie has reimagined the game as a sci-fi PvP extraction shooter. Players enter dangerous zones to collect loot and then try to escape without getting eliminated. And Marathon is built around that core idea. high stakes, tight firefights, and a big focus on multiplayer competition. Now, while the concept sounds interesting to some people who like this type of stuff, and maybe exciting as well on paper, the development journey has been far from smooth. Shortly after the game's announcement, things started to unravel behind the scenes. In 2024, reports began surfacing about a major issue at Bungie. First, the company went through a round of layoffs, which shook the team and disrupted development. But even more concerning was the firing of the game's director, Christopher Barrett. And according to several insiders, including well-known reporter Tom Henderson, Barrett was let go over misconduct allegations. That move obviously caused a leadership shakeup, and Bungie brought in Joe Ziegler, who had previously worked as the game director for Valorant, to take over this Bungie project. And while that brought some fresh energy and maybe a new direction, it also meant changes to the game's vision and timeline. In the middle of all this, the game got delayed to 2025. Then things got messier. Early in 2025, Bungie finally shared a new gameplay trailer and gave fans a release date. Marathon was now set to launch on September 23rd, 2025. On the surface, that sounds like great news. Finally, some progress, but the celebration didn't last long. Just days after the release date announced, Bungie found itself in hot water again, this time over stolen artwork. It came out that the Marathon trailer and promotional material included visual assets that had been taken from a digital artist known as Anti-Real without their permission. Bungie admitted they messed up, they apologized, and they said they'd move the content and make things right with the artist, though it wasn't clear what kind of compensation or agreement that involved. As if that wasn't enough drama, rumors started swirling again, this time around the game's marketing. On a recent episode of the Sacred Symbols podcast, former IGN journalist Colin Moriarty dropped a surprising bit of information. According to one of his sources, someone allegedly involved with marketing in a major overseas market said that there's no plans for any paid advertising for Marathon. Now that is incredibly unusual, especially for a game that is supposed to be one of Sony's big multiplayer pushes for 2025. Now, it's worth pointing out that this is still a rumor at this stage, but Sony hasn't confirmed anything and plans can always change. But if it's true, it could be a sign that confidence in the game is starting to slip. After all, when a company spends the amount of money Sony has spent on development for Marathon, and don't forget the acquisition too of Bungie, they've spent billions on Bungie and the development of Marathon. The last thing you'd expect them to do is cut the marketing budget. It does raise a lot of questions about how well the game is shaping up internally and whether Sony or Bungie is starting to doubt its chances in the crowded live service market. Let's not forget both Bungie and Sony are under a lot of pressure right now, and Sony has already had to scrap several live service games, and Bungie has been dealing with public criticism, layoffs, and morale issues from former staff members. And some ex-developers have even spoken out against the studio's current leadership and decision-making. So yeah, Marathon is carrying a lot of weight on its shoulders, and it's not even out yet. And one thing to note though, when Marathon finally releases, it won't be a fully priced title either. It's not going to be a free game, that's for sure. Most people expect it to land between the $40 to $50 pound range. So it's set to launch officially at the moment across all platforms, PlayStation, Xbox, and PC, with full cross-play support. So where does that leave us? Well, Marathon still has the potential, but it's had a very rough road getting to this point. Between the leadership changes, asset controversies, delays, and marketing concerns, there's a lot of red flags around this game. Whether the game ends up being a comeback story or another cautionary tale for live service games remains to be seen. All we can do now is wait and see what happens in September 2025. So that's 2 games and 2 studios in Bungie and Haven in massive trouble. And let's not forget, Sony had big plans for live service games on the PlayStation platform. At one point, and this was Jim Ryan's strategy when he came out and announced it, right, back in 2020, at one point, the company announced it was aiming to release 12 live service titles by the end of fiscal year 2026. The dirty dozen, 12 live service titles. These games were supposed to represent a major change for the PlayStation brand, moving away from what it had been doing for the best part of 25 years, which was making great single-player story-driven titles that it's known for, and moving straight headfirst into the world of online multiplayer experiences. I mean, to shift away from what you've been doing for the best part of, like I said, over 2 decades, making great single-player games, into all of a sudden announcing that you're going to sign off multiple studios who really don't have any experience in live service games, and you're going to make 12 live service titles, and it's clearly not gone to plan. Over the past few years, Sony's live service push has had major setbacks. Several high-profile games were either quietly cancelled, shut down shortly after launch, or resulted in entire studios being closed. What started as an ambitious project and strategy has now turned into a cautionary tale for how quickly things can fall apart in the fast-moving, high-risk world of online gaming. One of the biggest flops, Concord. Developed by Firewalk Studios, the game launched in August 2024 as a hero-based shooter, similar in style perhaps to Overwatch or Valorant, but almost immediately the game struggled to find an audience. Reviews were shocking, they were poor, players weren't interested in the game, and the game servers were almost empty after just a few days. In a move that surprised even industry insiders, Sony shut the game down just 2 weeks after release. Soon after, Firewalk Studios, the team behind it, was also closed down completely. This wasn't just a game failure, it was a project that cost them over $200 million. What a mistake that is. Many live service games didn't even make it to launch though. Some were announced or teased, while others were cancelled behind the scenes before they ever saw the light of day. And the biggest one was the Last of Us Online project made by Naughty Dog. This was one of the most anticipated multiplayer spin-offs, originally planned as a standalone follow-up to The Last of Us Part 2. It was officially cancelled in December 2023, and according to Naughty Dog, the official reason here was that the scope of the game had become too big to manage without impacting other projects. They didn't want to become a live service studio, essentially, and simply put, the game was too ambitious and couldn't be completed to the studio standards. Another game that was in development was Spider-Man: The Great Web by Insomniac Games, a multiplayer spin-off set in the Spider-Man universe. The game was in early development but was quickly shelved around 2022. Not much was officially confirmed, but internal leaks suggest it was meant to bring multiple Spider heroes together in a co-op setting. God of War live service game by Bluepoint Games was another game that was canned in January 2025. An unannounced multiplayer project set in the God of War universe was cancelled. Bluepoint Games, known for their work on remakes like Demon's Souls, had been experimenting with multiplayer ideas, but they ultimately did not move forward. And then we have Ben Studios' sci-fi live service game. Again, January 2025, this unannounced project from Ben Studio, the developers behind Days Gone, it was scrapped. This game was supposed to be a sci-fi co-op shooter, but never got past early development. Firesprite were working on a Twisted Metal live service game. That game cancelled during pre-production in February 2024. The project was going to revive the Twisted Metal franchise in a live service format, but unfortunately it never advanced beyond the concept phase. And London Studios was working on a fantasy co-op game, which was one of the more creative pitches in Sony's pipeline, but that game was cancelled in early 2024. It was supposed to offer a new IP with a fresh setting, but the project was axed and London Studio was shut down as a result. Bungie was also working on a Destiny spin-off called Payback, and it was developing a third-person looter shooter spin-off separate from the Destiny 2 and the Destiny world, and the project was cancelled in August 2024. Then we have a brand new studio, Deviation Games. That was a new studio made up of Call of Duty veterans. They've been working on a live service game since its formation, but in May 2023, the project was cancelled and the studio was officially closed in early 2024. Now, Horizon have a couple of games. They were working on a Horizon MMO game. So the massively multiplayer online game set in the Horizon universe that was reportedly in development with their partners NCSoft, and according to multiple reports, the project was cancelled in late 2024. And then we have another unannounced title. This one was from a studio called Neon Koi. Now this project was cancelled in 2024 and the studio was shut down shortly after. As of May 2025, we only have 3 games in development, 3 live service games. These live service games right now, as of May, are still in development, although their futures are still unclear. As mentioned, Fairgames and Haven Studios, Marathon and Bungie, and we have Horizon Online by Guerrilla Games, and that project is still moving forward and is said to be a co-op multiplayer game set in the Horizon universe, very similar to Monster Hunter Wilds, kind of teamwork to take down robotic creatures. Officially, that's still live in development, but let's watch this space. Originally, Sony saw live service games as the future. These types of games, which are built around reoccurring updates and long-term engagement, were seen as a way to compete with other live service games. But after multiple delays, cancellations, organizational changes and failures, Sony is scaling back, which is good. I'm glad they are. They're now being more selective, which is what they should have done in the first place, focusing on just a few titles, in fact a couple of titles, rather than trying to launch a dozen all at once. At the same time, Sony seems to be refocusing on what it's always done well, which is single player narrative-driven games. Franchises like God of War, Spider-Man Horizon, The Ghosts of Tsushima have all consistently been fan favorites, and after the disaster that's been their live service experiment, it looks like Sony is starting to go back to what players love most about PlayStation. So what do you guys make of all of this? Sony going back to its roots, which is what we all want, right? This is all great, but I feel like 5 years into this current generation, even though we've had some really good games, we could have had so much more. I feel like we're 5 years behind the curve where Sony needs to catch up with its first-party studios. And these games that these first-party studios are working on, a lot of these games are not going to be out until the PS6 comes out. And they're going to be cross-gen games because they're not going to leave behind the PS5 generation, right? Except for the games we already know that are in development from the first-party studios. I'm not about third-party, first-party here. Games like Saros, Ghosts of Yotai, Intergalactic, and maybe the God of War project by Santa Monica Studios and Wolverine. Beyond these games, I'm not sure we're going to see anything else from Sony first party on the PlayStation 5, specifically before the PS6 comes out in around 2027, 2028. And then those games that do come out will be, of course, cross-gen. If anything, from this live service mess, at least Sony is going back to its roots and we can look forward to single-player games whenever they are released. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments and let's move on to some positive news. Sony's annual Days of Play event is right around the corner, and if the latest leaks are accurate, this year's sale could be one of the most generous we've seen yet. The event is expected to kick off on May the 28th and will run for 2 weeks, offering major discounts on PlayStation 5 consoles, accessories, games, and subscriptions. The leak comes from a source that's been pretty much spot on many times before. Somebody called Bill Bilkun, a well-known insider who regularly posts early deal information on Deal Labs. And based on what they've shared so far, there's a lot for PlayStation fans to get excited about this year. One of the headlines is a price drop for the PlayStation 5 Pro, which hasn't even been on the market for very long. According to the leak, the PlayStation 5 Pro model will be €50, £50, $50 cheaper. And if this discount carries over to all regions, we could be seeing it being sold for around £650, euros and dollars across multiple regions during this sale period. Now keep in mind the PlayStation 5 Pro is the upgraded version of the PlayStation 5, expected to offer better performance, higher frame rates, and more stable visuals for demanding games. A discount at this early stage in its life cycle is pretty rare, and it could make the system more appealing to players who've been waiting for the upgrade. But it's not just the PlayStation 5 Pro version getting a discount. The base PS5, including both the disc version and the digital edition, are getting a phenomenal discount if this happens to be true. It's getting a discount of £100, euros and dollars. That's a massive chunk of savings, especially if you're buying your first PlayStation 5. And Sony's not just stopping at the consoles. If you had your eye on the PlayStation VR 2 headset like I have for well over a year now, this might be the best opportunity to get it at a lower price. The leak suggests that it's going to be around €50, pounds and dollars cheaper, which could be a big win for anyone looking to jump into the world of VR gaming. On top of that, there will also be discounts on DualSense controllers, and Sony is also expected to offer deals on PlayStation Plus memberships, with discounts reportedly going as high as 30% off. It's also worth noting that the PlayStation Plus Essentials games for June 2025 will also be revealed around the same time as the sale that goes live. Sony might use the announcement to drive more attention to the membership discounts, especially if the free games are strong. Alongside the hardware and subscription discounts, we're also expecting a PlayStation Store sale, usually including hundreds of PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 games, some titles discounted by up to 70% off. So if you've got a wish list of games that you've been waiting to buy, it's probably worth just holding off for a few more days until the sale goes live. The Days of Play is always a good time to pick up loads of games or accessories, so if you've been on the fence with some of these titles, it's probably a good time to jump in. Let me know what you're planning on picking up over the next couple of weeks, and let's move on. Just days after an earlier gameplay leak made the headlines, even more footage of the upcoming Battlefield 6 game has surfaced online. This time though, it's not just a few clips, it's over 90 minutes of gameplay supposedly captured directly on a PlayStation 5. The footage was posted by a user named GAMBF, G-A-M-B-F, who shared a deep look into the game's current state. The video includes a look at the main menu, matchmaking systems, in-game loadout and map screens, and even several full-length matches. In other words, this is the most detailed leak so far that's been put onto the internet for Battlefield 6. But here's the thing, the footage wasn't supposed to be made public. The player who recorded it and uploaded it was part of an official playtest NDA. That means they have legally agreed not to share any content or gameplay footage. Breaking that agreement can lead to serious consequences from EA, including legal action. So while the leak might be exciting, lots of people looking forward to Battlefield 6, it definitely comes with some risk for the person who did share it. And one of the biggest takeaways from the leak is that the Battlefield 6 game seems to be returning to the franchise's roots. Longtime fans will be happy to hear that the destruction is once again a major part of the gameplay. This means buildings, environments, and even cover can be blown apart either in big dramatic explosions or through smaller, more tactical damage. From the leak, stray bullets can chip away at walls, while heavy artillery like rockets or tanks can level structures entirely. It's a welcome return to form, especially after the more controversial and divisive Battlefield 2042, which many players felt lacked the series' signature feel and polish. The gameplay in the leaked footage shows intense firefights, dynamic map layouts, and detailed urban and open combat zones. EA hasn't confirmed all of these specifics just yet, but if the leaked content reflects the current build of the game, it looks like they're refocusing on delivering what longtime Battlefield players have been asking for: chaotic, large-scale battles with plenty of tactical freedom. It's clear that EA and DICE are trying to course correct after Battlefield 2042. That title launched with very high expectations. However, performance issues and missing features led to widespread disappointment. Now, Battlefield 6, the developers seem to be focusing on player feedback, doubling down on features that made the series popular in the first place, which was destructible environments, balanced gunplay, and large-scale multiplayer combat. And while there's no official release date, many expect the game to be formally revealed during the Summer Game Fest and possibly playable in early May 2026. I'm looking forward to a really good Battlefield game. It's been quite some time since we've actually had the pleasure of playing a great Battlefield game, especially if these leaks and rumors are true about the fully destructible environments. Are you excited for this game? Let me know your thoughts in the comments about today's content, and I'll catch you on the next video.